Join me in welcoming Douglas L. Hey, Douglas, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
So good to have you here with us. Start us off by telling us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Oh, well, my day job is an attorney, but my passion is writing books about science and God. And I've written two nonfiction books, and now I've written a novel that I'm very excited about.
I love that. Your latest book called Rise Above that talks about how science can prove the existence of God. Tell us a little bit first about what inspired the book and what your hopes are for it.
Sure, I'm hoping it will change people's lives. I used to be an atheist, and then when my wife dragged me to church to get my son baptized, I felt there was something there, but I was at MIT graduate, double major math physics. So I told myself there had to be some scientific evidence. And I've been looking for decades, and I've just been amazed what I find. Um, and so I've written two nonfiction books on that. One called Counting to God, fairly serious. I published in 2014 with a lecture opening at MIT, and then a book aimed at younger readers um, called Proofs of God, which we're just going to re-release in a graphic novel in a few weeks. But uh, I hooked up with Steve Eggleston and told him I wanted to redo my first book. And he said, maybe if you could put this in a fictional form, put a story, people will read it, because a lot of people don't even want to read nonfiction books, and you got to make it an interesting story. So I spent about 2 years doing that. I just find, again, the scientific evidence for our finely tuned universe and the design and all of life to be overwhelming. And I just want to share that joy. And it's a kind of a Christmas setting, so it's appropriate.
That's absolutely awesome. So, of course, a person has to get a book to learn all of the reasons. But give us one of the best reasons as a MIT graduate that you know or you have proof that there is a God.
Well, the number one reason is the complexity in biology, Steve. I mean, biological systems are so complex. I mean, they're built off a code called DNA, which we still don't know how it works. There's layers and layers of code in there, and we know that that's been proven by over 400 scientists, that there's multiple levels of code in the human DNA. There's no other example of working code that's ever come about by chance. There's no example of technology that's ever arisen by chance. We have this theory from 150 years ago that species magic prove. And we know all the advanced computer simulations show it's false. I mean, human beings have 100 errors each generation. And, even if you believe Darwin's theory that, natural selection will make some correction, it only gets one choice out of 100 errors. It can't fix the errors. We're going downhill. So it all had to start with just an amazing technology. Clearly, human beings are designed.
Oh gosh, so many directions we can take the conversation. So, do we talk about the fact that, in spite of all of the fallacies to evolution, Darwin was a Christian his entire life? Or do we talk about, you know what I'm saying? I mean, what is your favorite part of talking on this subject to people who are really adamantly against it?
I just ask them to look at the evidence. There's no evidence for why anything is other than God. This multiverse, and that book gets into this a little bit. It's nonsense that doesn't work. You still have to have a beginning, and science can't tell you why there is something rather than nothing. Science has absolutely no answer to that question. But I do try to do more than that in the book. I try to basically defend the accuracy of the entire literal word of the Bible.
I love that. I assume that you've probably also read Josh McDowell's Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Have you ever read those books?
No.
Oh,
Uh,
well, sometime later when we're not in an interview, we'll talk about those too.
okay.
I love it. So, MIT graduate, meaning that you believe in equations, 2 plus 2 equals 4,
Absolutely.
not 2 plus 2 equals, something. um, and then we get into all of these leaps of faith, really. What do you say to the people who have literally made a leap of faith into something that has no provable facts behind it?
I ask him, and that's what I consider to be Darwinian theory. There are no facts behind it. If you look at it closely, I ask people who are skeptical about God to be skeptical of their own skepticism. Really look at the facts, the amazing discoveries, the complexity of the human brain with more processing powers, more processing units than all computers on Earth combined, and as many connections as stars in 1,000 galaxies. And it all starts up with a single cell in a human baby. I mean, it's all there if you want to look, and a lot of people won't look, and that's fine. But what I needed was a story, and I think I found a good one of a family searching for faith. Starts off with a very rich man about to die, and decides he has a moment with God, and he's going to give his money to God, and the kids come home furious to try to talk him out of
I love that. Uh, yeah, that sounds too much like children, I think.
it. Yeah.
So, throughout the course of the book, um, let's say a person approaches it and they don't believe in God at all, but they want to read it as a good story. What kind of a journey can they go through from just, a good story to read kind of a standpoint?
I think it's a pretty easy read. I mean, a friend of mine just sort of described it as a beach read. I kind of throw in a little humor and some believable characters. It's not some sort of difficult to understand book. The characters are very real. And, I think anyone who reads the book is going to, I'm just trying to open eyes so they'll read other books and, just be open to faith. And a lot of people are closed and you can't reach those people, but there's so much wonder, so much reason for hope and joy in the world. I feel sorry for people who shut it out. I mean, I feel sorry for the people I know who say they're confirmed atheists. They may be great people, but they have no hope.
Mm, yeah, that's for sure. So, give us some insight into how we can really research, explore, and discover the things that we're convinced, even though we may not necessarily be right, regardless, Christian, atheist, whatever. How do we go through the process of really logically finding truth?
Well, that's a great question. I think you have to look at all the evidence. If you come in with your mind made up, as a lot of people do, um, you not a way to search for truth. To search for truth, you have to look at everything and make up your own mind. I think this book will help people who are open to that make up their mind and search for truth. You have to put in the effort. And I think like I said, I've done it in a fun way. It's kind of a beach novel. It's a pretty easy read. And I think anybody who reads it is going to be pretty astonished. There's a lot of facts in there. I even put notes in it, which I know people don't put in novel, but just, on different points, if you want to read, here's the article you read or the book you read.
Oh, I love that. Sounds like a lot of fun and maybe even a good way to spend Christmas.
Maybe.
Oh, I love that. So, you double majored math and physics, not like any one of them by themselves wouldn't have been enough. And then MIT on top of that. But let's talk a little bit. We talked about mathematics, but if I understand correctly, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, one of the very first fundamental principles of physics is everything is moving from structure to unstructure, or from, to
Correct.
chaos, right? Okay, good. I want to
Yes.
make sure. And so I guess outside of God or an external source, how do people in any way define that the world could be getting better with that underlying scientific principle? That one I've never been able to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I mean, you put your finger on a really key point, which also in the book, I mean, the law you referred to is probably the most fundamental law in physics, which is everything decays, everything goes downhill. Technically the second law of thermodynamics. And then we have this imagined exception for living creatures called Darwinian theory that species magically improve. And whatever they see, they say, well, that's an example. It's never been observed. It's been shown mathematically by countless computer simulations it doesn't work. And it's only because we live in such a strange world that the truth's not out. But how does all the order and beauty in the world exist given the fundamental law of physics that everything decays and rots? Clearly, it had to start in a pretty nice place.
I think the balance to it, and forgive me for being a third generation minister, those of you that didn't know, but I love how David says, I will praise you because I was fearfully and wonderfully made. I
Yes,
mean, why not embrace that? I guess would be my
right,
question for Christmas for everybody.
right. Why not embrace um, hope and that we were made for a purpose? The human beings were designed. That's what the scientific evidence shows. It's not what our culture will tell you, but it's actually the point of the book is that science, in my view, demands that a rational person believe in God. There is no other legitimate scientific conclusion.
I love that. Absolutely. So tell
Yeah,
us
I'm
just a
making
little
the
bit.
book sound too technical. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of fun in it, but I'm sorry, I can't help being technical. Like I said, I'm an MIT math and physics guy.
Well, my fault. I'm a big geek. And so I was kind of taking you down that road too. Let's try to go for the people that don't want to geek out on math and physics. Tell us a little bit more of the story. What is the journey like for this man who is embracing faith that late in his life?
It's a strange journey, Steve. He finds out 2 days before Christmas he has pancreatic cancer, stage 4. He's going to die in a few days. He's a multi-billionaire. And driving home, he's thinking of committing suicide with a dose of the pain pills. And he has a vision of God. And from then he's trying to sort it out. So, he gets home and the wife says, well, the kids better come. This is the last Christmas. And, he tells them he's going to give his money away. They try to fight him. And it's a strange bunch of kids. His oldest daughter is a math teacher at MIT, married to a Harvard physics professor. His oldest son is a Stanford business grad who's an entrepreneur. And his youngest son is a criminal and a drug addict. So it's a typical upper middle class family. And the top two try and talk him out of it. And but the youngest son brings his girlfriend, who's a black hospital aide and of strong faith, and who fights with the Cambridge professors. It's there's tension, and John, the older man, sits back and tries to take it in.
I love it. I really do hope everybody will read Rise Up by Douglas L. It's available right now. In fact, if you ran out and got it right now, you can get it for free today. But it's going to be available on Amazon or all the other places that you get books. Douglas, before I let you go,
Hey, Steve,
um,
can I make one note? It's rise above, not rise
Rise,
up.
yes,
Rise above.
Rise Above. Yeah, it's sitting right here in front of me and I read it wrong. Sorry, everybody. Rise Above. Thank you, Douglas. um, before I let you go, though, just give us some words of encouragement. You've been through so much. You have so much information. Let us know how we can rise above in our own life.
I think you have to be willing to see that there's a lot of lies everywhere. We are fallen beings and we live in a fallen world. And when you turn on the TV, you see lies, you know, but we can rise above it. That's the point of the book. We don't have to be dragged into some, he who dies with the most toys mentality. Um, there's a lot of joy and a lot of beauty out there. And I think we need to trust. And that's the basic meaning of faith.
I love that. Well, do get Rise Above by Douglas L. today, available on Amazon. Douglas, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
And thanks so much for having me.